Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. I missed you a lot over the over our summer break, and it just feels great to be back. We're meeting a little earlier today because I have, well, if as you might notice, I have a tie on, and I have a kind of something else to go to immediately after this, so I have to race off. But uh, but the tie is kind of celebratory in it in its own way. Um, so Marita, shall we begin?
Go
Patty,
ahead. That would
hello.
be lovely. Thank you.
Um, so, um, let me introduce and read our poem for today. Um, it's one of what has been called Hopkins's terrible sonnets, which is not an indication of quality, but of uh, his own torments. And there's a series of them. I think they're among his most powerful poems and also among his most difficult. And one of the difficulties, as you have undoubtedly noticed, is grammatical, and that there are words that I think mainly that he invented in which uh, he changes the parts of speech, and things that we expect to be nouns or adjectives, uh, he uses as verbs, and or other parts of speech, and that's a challenge. That was a challenge for certainly a challenge for his own readers, but remains a challenge for us. But I find these poems um, profoundly moving, and also in some way positive and hopeful. And somehow this seemed right for our moment. Um, oh, and welcome everyone. I'm just so glad to see you. So glad to see you all. So, Marita, I'm going to depend on you or uh, anyone else who notices. Hi, Jennifer. Uh, uh, to call on because I can only see one screen at a time, and there are enough of you for to be on two screens. So this is great, but it's pardon me if I don't notice that you have something to say. Um, this is a sonnet. Uh, the only title we know of it is uh, the repetition of the first line. My own heart, let me more have pity on. Let me live to my sad self hereafter kind, charitable, not live this tormented mind with this tormented mind tormenting yet. I cast for comfort I can no more get by groping round my comfortless than blind eyes in their dark can day, or thirst can find thirsts in a wor in all a world of wet. Soul, self, come, poor Jack self, I do advise you, jaded, let be. Call off thoughts a while elsewhere. Leave comfort root room. Let joy sighs at God knows when to God knows what. Who smiles not wrung, see you. Unforeseen times, rather, as skies between pie mountains, lights a lovely mile. I would encourage all of you to read it aloud to yourselves, or anyone who is willing to listen. Um, Tell me about um, tell us about your first responses uh, to reading this poem. Some of you, have any of you read this before, or uh, was this new to most of you? Um, Jennifer, you've read it before. James,
Yes,
yes, have you read this before?
I have read this many times. I did my dissertation on despair in British and American drama.
Oh
Oh,
boy,
uh,
this
And
must
so
have
I
been
was interested in these poems and have been interested in them ever since graduate school.
what a great subject, and what wonderful poems you must have included in your discussion.
It's a growth industry, isn't it? Just
Yes, I would say by the day, uh, even. But what was your first impression? What was your first reaction um, uh, uh, to to this poem?
well, I'll say just to break the ice,
Please,
yeah,
please. Thanks, Ginny.
that I found surprises in every line, not with the
Mm.
ideas, but with the use of language.
Yeah,
And it was a struggle to puzzle some out.
yeah,
Um, for example, in the second line, let me live to my sad self. I found that a little tricky to live to my sad self. But um, as I puzzled through some of his using, say, an adjective comfortless as a noun, and I I enjoyed those aspects. And it brought the ideas alive in new ways. So I'll
yeah.
just start with that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good. Yeah, good.
if I
Thank you,
can plug
James.
in
Yeah.
on that, I think the first line, just the more, the use
Mm.
of the word more out of sequence. And instead of normally you would the no more would refer to pity, but now we're putting it where it is. It refers to me. So you're interested in his internal feelings rather than the pity, which is, I think, kind of interesting.
Yeah.
hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll
Good.
Yes,
just
Nick. Yeah, go ahead.
you try to answer your first question directly.
Yeah,
When I
please.
first read this, I saw a man in terrible sorrow and feeding sorrow, feeding on itself, worse and worse. How can I stop feeling worse in a cyclical, compounding way? But at the end, this is a poem of of hope, beautifully expressed, I thought. So I
Oh,
thought that he sort of worked his way out of that initial horrendous situation to to beautifully express hope.
Yeah. And working himself out of that really by way of a kind of language that isn't isn't the common language. You feel him wrestling at every moment really until the very end. Um, Hopkins was Welsh, I believe, and I don't know, Bill Symes. I call on you as an expert on British English, and
Um, yeah, I don't think he was Welsh. I think he's a Londoner. I mean, I think he comes from Highgate or somewhere, and then was at Oxford at Balliol. But I think he had after the conversion to, I mean, he was obviously born into an Anglican family and came under the influence of Cardinal Newman and others at Oxford, and converted to Catholicism, estranging himself from his family into the bargain. And I think as a trainee Jesuit, he had a period in Wales. I don't. The name Hopkins is Welsh in origin, but I don't think he would have counted himself Welsh. He might have had Welsh stock. Um, uh, um, but these poems come out of the period in Ireland, don't they? The first one of the six terrible sonnets, I think, refers to being at a further remove in Ireland, where he was presumably among Catholics, but somehow felt nonetheless alienated.
yeah.
Lloyd, we have a couple people. Wendell
Yes,
wants to say something, and then Jules.
thanks. When? Go ahead.
Well, I I I was struck. I'm struck by the by this by the second line, which sets the tone. It's we think of be kind, passive, just a passive state, but here we are kind and to live kind, to be active. That and it's a transitive verb. It's like and it's an acknowledgement of somebody of his own kind of depressive mood, just uh, about his humanity that's contained in this. He has to learn to live kind to himself, to
Mm.
let go of his sense of the sense of sin that just pervades the poems of his that I've come across.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Jules, you had your hand up.
Yes, hi everybody. Um, I feel very struck by the sort of the intimacy of this despair. This is like very much someone speaking to his own self, which of
Hmm.
course we're given that um explicitly throughout the text, but like I think we're also given that grammatically, um,
Mm.
because we have a handful of places where the repetition has a third repetition. And so rather than just this and then this, we have a couplet and then a couplet. We have this and then this and that. Like, and so there's a way that that reaches inward. It's like a twist of the knife or something. There's a way that that reaches like so far into it feels very spatial to me. I apologize for the analogy, but it feels like that builds credibility in a way because it brings me to it brings me to believe that like it's not just like a surface level understanding of like how far you have to reach into this person to contact them, but it's like there's an immediacy of knowing that actually in order to really pull you out of your despair, I have to acknowledge it by getting all the way into it and then sort of gently tug you forward. And like I think that really felt true to me with not lived this tormented mind with this tormented mind tormenting yet.
Yet.
That sort of felt there. And then we have it again a few lines later at thirst all in all. in all a world of wet.
Yeah.
I just felt like again and again, those are our only two, I think, perfect 3-time repetitions, but there's another couple places that feel slanted to me. But I just have this sense that like that structure for me experientially like legitimized uh his desperate and depressive sort of relationship to the self or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. I thank you so much. And I would add to that the other another element and one of the poetic elements that he uses to create that sense of that twisted sense, that twisting sense are the line breaks. And then uh, uh, then in right near the end of the poem, there's a line break in before the end of a word, and the word itself, uh, whose smile, even the punctuation, the apostrophe s, begins a new line, and so this is a it's a kind of in its way it's a kind of perfect Petrarchan sonnet, Italian sonnet, A B B A C D E. Well,
No,
it gets a little
Yeah.
more it gets a little more complicated.
EDC.
But
Can I
that sense of something um, just twisting and turning all the time, including turning on itself, as you say. Someone had a
Denise.
oh didn't oh okay, Denise and then Lee.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
What a great poem to choose. I read it as a prayer.
Hmm.
I want you to feel.
Hmm. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Uh,
Oh, there you
I
are.
can try. Yeah, I don't feel that it's, and I'm I'm seeing this as somebody who was raised in the Catholic Church and, who's also been part of other denominations. But I don't think that he's addressing the self purely as himself. I think it's himself as either believing in or wanting desperately to believe in a higher power. Um, and it's a plea for help. Um, and and it's a kind of prayer that exists, I would say, as a form in a lot of organized religions I'm familiar with. And getting to the end where God is in the third person, as God knows when to God knows what. I think that doesn't mean that God is regarded as a third person. I think if you believe in a Trinity, a mention of God is not necessarily ever third person. And
Hmm.
and even even prayers that we've received through scripture. And I think of the 23rd Psalm that starts off, "The Lord is my shepherd," and this Lord is very third person. But then there's sort of a versa where God is the you. God is where's the versa? Um, and it may start before then. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil,
Hmm.
for thou art with me. So, so I think that a shift like that doesn't make God less of an addressee. And this just feels like a prayer to me.
No, thank you.
Um,
Thank you. Lee,
Lloyd,
you had your hand up. Oh, sorry, Marita.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, but I think Jules was continuing her thought, and I cut her off earlier. And she posted something in the chat. And Jules, do you want to just follow up about the language? And then Jay is next. Thank
Sure,
you.
thank you. Well, I did write it in the chat. This is mostly what I was thinking about, which is that I think that the new language, the reassigning the parts of speech and building new words, it reminds me of Gwendolyn Brooks, or maybe Gwendolyn Brooks reminds me of this. But it feels like it adds to the private quality of this poem for me that I was trying to speak to when I last had the floor. And it's so private and so intimate that we're actually inside of a new world built by the pitiful heart. We're communicating with that heart in the terms that it has built or something. And it has similarity to the world outside, but it's distinct or something. You know, I feel like it has a relationship to our language, the outside language, but we're sort of within a membrane, something for me.
Yeah, thank you. I think Lee had her hand up a bit before Jay did. So Lee,
Okay.
what were you going to say?
No, I was just following up on that idea of the prayer. And just, I know I've read other Hopkins poems where there's this ecstatic quality in the end to me, where there's this sort of blessing of God shining down in this lovely smile that is sort of this ecstasy, that he builds through this twisting, tormented time to this wonderful sort of wide expanse of God's love and blessing. And I just thought it was beautiful.
Who smiles not wrung. So it's not twisted.
Right. Right.
Jay, yeah, what were you gonna?
Okay.
You have your hand up.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's sort of wonderful to hear all these different reactions, and but to your first question, Lloyd, and actually Lee, what you just said, when I first read this as a teenager, and it didn't resonate. It was the ecstatic poems and the wind hover in particular that meant the most to me. But the older I get, the more this resonates. And I thought Denise's point about the prayer, what I was noticing is what feels to me is a shift from will to surrender, because in the beginning of the octet, he's kind of trying to convince himself. He's saying, let me live. Let me more pity on. And even at the beginning of the sextet, he says, I do advise you, jaded, let be. But then down a couple of lines lower, what for me is the turn is leave comfort room. That it's now allowing us to go down into the earth, to allow the source of comfort to kind of grow up unwilling, almost out of the dark, and then what Denise quoted those lines right after, God knows when to God knows what, out of it's the comfort is going to come out of mystery.
Yeah. I want to pick up on your reference, what you were quoting just a moment ago, and ask any of you whether you picked up a little Shakespeare reference.
Maybe Bill.
Bill, your hand was up. Bill Bennett.
But I didn't pick up the Shakespeare reference.
Okay, well, we could come back to that in a minute.
Well, for me, in some ways, the poem pivots on Jack's self. In the octet, there's a kind of wandering around his own mind. His own mind is kind of the universe, and then he calls himself up short, because the Jack self is the everyman. It's a kind of it's every man Jack is a phrase, and
Right.
that tercet is for this poem pretty well kind of organized and simple, and sort of calling himself to account and pointing out that he is that his space isn't much bigger than anyone else's. And then it turns outward in the last tercet to the world outside, the mountains that are illuminated in a shifting kind of way by God. So sort of building on what Jay said, I think root room, Jack self, all earthbound, not inside his head, but then leading out to a landscape.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you. Yeah.
They're curious.
So let me, Catherine, okay. Yeah.
So many thoughts listening to this interesting discussion. About the self-enclosed or the mind making a whole world. That's the trouble with depression. And this is about conflict. I think there's a tormented mind and a tormenting mind, and in that tormented state, it doesn't matter what the outside world provides. It can provide a whole world of wet, but that won't slake the thirst. And it reminds me of Hopkins' "Thine, O thou Lord of life, send my roots rain," which is a cry for that same enlivening. The torment, I wanted to come back to the earlier point about the 3 repetitions. Tormented becomes almost onomatopoetic about how torment is relentless. You know, you have it once and you have it twice. And here's a third time where it reminds me of that famous photograph that's now controversial about a slave with lashes on his back. You know, so many, scars on the back of the slave, that it's, relentless is the word I'm seeking after. Okay, that's
Gina.
Enough for now.
Yeah. Hi, Gina.
So I don't know if anyone has said this or implied it already. I was late, but one of the things that struck me most, that strikes me, but struck me on reading this poem most recently, is that the sextet, which we think is a way out, is only a positing of a way out. It's not in any sense actual. And he is, it's a kind of inducement to self. Even those powerful last 2 lines, the most potent inducement is, of course, God's smile and the striving to please God, right? And I agreed so much with Denise that it is a prayer. Maybe my own Catholic education is prompting that reading, but it's straight prayer to me. And I also wanted to add to, I think, something that Jules was saying, 2 points that Jules was saying. I also read Hopkins in relationship to Brooks, in what they are creating rhythmically. But what is interesting about both, and I think about this a lot, what I think about in relationship to both, and we see this here, and Hopkins writes, well, it's said from the outset about Hopkins' writing, right, the first anthologization, that there is the play with rhythm, but then there's, running verse, and a single poem can have this. So this sort of concatenation between, I guess, I don't remember the term that Jules used to describe it, but I would say it's not a constant struggle. He reaches a moment of I don't know if it's clarity, but then it's brought back into the depression, and that is the constant struggle of the poem as well, right? And the last sestet being, an effort, the resolution of the Petrarchan sonnet, but but a hypothesizing of the resolution, all right, to the classical resolution. I wanted to also say that I put this poem side by side with a sonnet I know of Petrarch's, and it was stunning to see the parallels in voice, right? And the movement of voice in the two. I think I was looking at sonnet 19. So there is really a lot, of interest in that sense, right? And of course the importance that voice plays here, right?
Which is Petrarch's sonnet 19? I don't know the numbers of Petrarch.
Oh, I don't have it handy.
No. Do you remember the first line?
No,
Okay.
because I do read a prominent English translation. I have paltry Italian, so I tried to read it in my paltry Italian. I think the English translation I find are more flattening. So I tried to do that.
It happens, yes.
Yeah. So.
Well, I want to get back. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to get back to Shakespeare again, because there is a phrase in this poem that comes directly out of Shakespeare and in a similar place in the story. But any thoughts? What's Shakespeare's most famous line?
We have, I don't know, Mike Stefan, does he know? And we've got a few other people.
I see Mike's hand
To be
is up.
or not to be.
Well,
Parrish?
Well, I'm guessing that you're going after to be or not to be.
Right.
Yes, I am.
Right.
Yeah.
And to be or not to be, Mike, I'll get back to you in a second. I see your hand up. So to be or not to be comes fairly early in the play. But there's a reference later in the play to be or not to be, near the end of the play, when Hamlet says, "Let be."
Right.
And for me, the whole play and the tragedy of the play is moving from the question of to be or not to be to the answer, let be. And that let be comes in this Hopkins sonnet, comes in a kind of equivalent place, not quite at the end, but near the end. And the prayer, Denise, as you say, the prayer is to let be. And to, I don't know, does that resonate with anyone? Does it mean anything to anyone that?
exactly, Lloyd.
Yeah.
It's going to take me to my favorite line in Shakespeare, which is "The quality of mercy is not strained," and I'm seeing that line,
Good line.
in God's smile is not wrung.
Wrong.
He's coming to this realization. So I was getting "the quality of mercy is not strained," which is my favorite line from Shakespeare. But while I have the mic, I'm just going to say, it's very interesting to look at the poem for its technicalities because everyone's wrenching all of this, existential dread. And the fact is, one thing Hopkins does is a thing that Mallarmé, his exact contemporary, 1840-ish to 1889, trying to write a sonnet that does not sound like a sonnet, that will only look like a sonnet. The French, after Baudelaire had restored the elegant, regular, heroic Alexandrine, Mallarmé tried to think what to do with it. If you go look at Stéphane Mallarmé, he is messing with enjambment constantly, syntactical ends to make sure that if he were to read his sonnet naturally, it would not sound at all like a sonnet. But lo and behold, when you do the paperwork, there it is.
There it
And I
is.
think Hopkins is working at this. Everyone wants to put all this, spiritual wrestling at the heart of everything. Technically, poets were trying to reinvent the wheel, to make the wheel turn again, to make it real again, which is part of what Hopkins does so well in his verse, I think. But there is a technical aspect to that. I can't overlook the fact of self-care. We talk about self-care today. Hopkins has come to a moment. He's going to care for himself and stop beating himself up. Go a little bit easy. And then the English weather, a world of wet. This thing about the liquid element of poetry. Is he suffering from depression or is it compression? I wonder. Poets are compressive in their minds. They make mountains out of molehills. I think what he's saying is come to perspective, but it's a beautiful sonnet. Last thought, an American or a professor of modern American poetry had as our three sources, Whitman, Dickinson, and Hopkins. Hopkins for his optimism, I think, very modern in the gloom he takes on and resolves again and again in optimistic on the upper. He has got such a sweet, sweet temper. He is so kind to nature and to the dark forces that impinge on him, and always turning out a darling, always with a kiss for the dark forces upon him, and finding this ability to transform that despair into joy, which I think is absolutely marvelous. So
Thank you. Thank you. Meredith and then Parrish.
And Jennifer. Jennifer actually, I think, has been waiting with Meredith. So
Okay.
I'm sorry. This is the people are really excited to speak up. So thank you,
Good.
Lloyd. Go ahead, Meredith.
Meredith.
Thank you. I'm struck by the idea of the prayer. For me, the first section of the sonnet is the prayer, and the volta comes with a kind of speaking to himself because God is not at this moment, but also speaking about how he doesn't know when comfort will arrive or in what form. Only God can know that. And I love the ending because he's really talking about surprise, which was something that, of course, was very important to Robert Frost. Surprise for the writer, surprise for the reader. And I had a lot of trouble with whose smile. You don't get a lovely mile. But I think whose is joy. Let joy size could mean let joy grow now that it has root room, but we don't know why or when. And perhaps it is joy's smile or God's smile that will appear, but again, you don't know. And then he's got one of these wonderful analogies from the natural world and from weather, where you glimpse a sky between mountains. I guess mountains of different color would be between pie. And it lights your path. It gives you a glimpse of somewhere to walk to or some kind of, in a way, hope in the sky. And I love how he returns to the natural world for that.
I have also wrestled with parts of the ending. I think the between pie, for one thing, it's a verb, and I think it's the skies, the light of the sky coming between the mountain peaks that he's looking at. They're intervening. The sky is coming between and lighting that mile, so it becomes a lovely mile. Um, that's my own take on it. Jennifer, and then Parish.
I wanted to say I wanted to make a comparison to two Shakespeare sonnets to help me characterize the way this poem moves for me, especially the way the tangles of the self regarding the self in the first part are syntactic tangles, word order tangles, that also because they manifest themselves in the repetition we've felt, won't move forward, keep tangling themselves back, as many other sounds block us and tangle us to dramatize this self-regarding unhappiness, um, uh, which will open out at the end to something that moves more easily. And to think of that in relation, Lloyd, to the let be, if we also hear the kind of prayer of the lets throughout, let me have more pity, let me live, uh, let be, leave comfort, let joy sighs, this repetition carries things, that the two sonnets it suggests to me, one is one that begins and ends in similar places. So when in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and weep my state. Uh, it's not as syntactically complex there and twisted as Hopkins is, but it's doing the same. I'm going to make you feel how stuck on myself I am by repeating things. And then that one ends with the same kind of lift, when in these thoughts myself almost despising, haply I think on thee, and that's like God and his smile coming in, haply I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. And it's not, it's not a big deal to say a dark night poem would end with morning coming and the lift. But I think the additional point I would want to make is the way the syntactic knots get combed out into something with a longer breath and that rises, like the idea of the lark. And then if I were to go into it more, this kind of trapped pattern from a different kind of sonnet from Shakespeare would be the expensive spirit in a waste of shame is lust in action, and till action lust is perjured, murderous, bloody, full of blame. It's his twistiest. And again, what I love in those poems as well as in the Hopkins is the idea that the emotional drama of the poem can be embodied in the syntax and the sounds and carried in it. And so that we're given a kind of a dramatic script and maze to enter into and come out of ourselves and be done to by the movement of the poem, the way the speaker is being done to by the movement of his emotions. So maybe it's just stop there.
Well, that's such a wonderful point, and the way in both those Shakespeare sonnets, the line breaks and the enjambments are both the trap, the twisty inability to escape the form, and also the release from the the box that the form has, the prison that the form has locked you in. So the lark at break of day, it just, it's this total, after all this depression, this total sense of release and freedom. And that happens, I agree with you, that happens in this poem as well. Parish, you've been waiting.
Oh,
Thank
well,
you.
I feel now there are so many great comments that I might be repeating some things. I just was
Please.
going to go back to the word let, and as
Oh,
Jennifer was just talking about, and it coming
please.
up, and some of those repetitions just doing by the numbers are 3 times, but let is 4 times, and back to the original observation that this is prayer, and that that word let, I feel, is so what is it really? It's both beseeching and accommodating at the same time, meaning it's a call for alignment. Let, a beautiful word, really, that has both aspiration and not surrender exactly, but acceptance, or what. And it
Yes.
reminds me of that wonderful other poem of Hopkins called The Temper, which I just think is just so superb, and I've always loved it so much. But The Temper has shall we say, again, the speaker transforms, as the speaker does here, through the speaking, and the temper really takes the speaker to a pure alignment, or a wish for alignment with God, to make one place everywhere. I feel like I mean, forgive me, my thoughts are a little rambly here, but I wanted to say, I love what you said, Lloyd. I think about the release of the last stanza, and I'm just appreciating the sense of both distance and proximity that you get with that rhyme of smile and mile. There's still a distance, but this, as you pointed out, is it joy? Is it God's smile? We don't know, but that it's not wrung, but it's available.
Yeah.
Something like that. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Catherine.
I have a question then.
Oh,
poets.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Catherine, Catherine, did you have your hand up as well?
I did. I just put a question.
Then Catherine Black.
I'm Catherine with an A in the middle. You're Catherine with an E in the middle.
In the middle.
It's a big difference.
Okay. I just wanted to ask the poets what the impact of that beginning the line with apostrophe S, which I thought Elizabeth Bishop made up as a joke.
Hopkins was her favorite poet.
I know. That's why I thought of that when I recognized the similarity. But what does it do? I mean, in the Bishop context, it makes you smile.
Yeah.
But what about here? Suppose he'd said, "Whose smile's not wrong, you see you," and it would have been a near rhyme. And
yeah,
I wondered whether any poets have a thought about apostrophe S at the beginning of a line.
It's pretty odd.
It's delightful. I don't know if that's a nice enough answer. I feel like it's like it's a surprise that is particularly joyful, and I'm sorry to jump in, but it's particularly joyful in a moment of joy, in this estet of joy. And so I think there's something that's grammatically like a little burst of like, ooh, that while we're trying to smile, we're smiling. It's making me smile.
Also a kind of release from the form. It just seems very daring.
Yes.
To me, that you can't stop. So usually you kind of stop where the rhyme comes, but here you can't, and you can't in the most graphic way, you can't stop with whose smile.
The.
You just can't, and you just have to continue into the word that it's part of. But Catherine and then Gina.
I had a simpler observation. Well, two actually.
Okay.
If he started as an Anglican, one of the highlights of being an Anglican is the prose of the and poetry of the Book of Common Prayer, for rhythm, for words, for all kinds of things. And people cite it as, if you want to read better, if you want to write better, read better, start with the Book of Common Prayer. And this is as exactly not that is possible. I'm not bound by that tradition, I
Right.
can do this. So, but I suspect that would be unconscious rather than intentional. But at the end, this who smiles, the pressure of getting to the smiles, but it's not wrong. And to have the odd construction, and it's not wrong, whose smile appears.
Yeah.
So and it's all this back and forth until the one simple phrase. I mean, there were a couple of others I cast for comfort, or that are straightforward grammar and idea. And lovely isn't the most imaginative word I've ever heard. And I think that's exactly so. It just lights a lovely mile. Just there it is. I
And
don't have
it's
to be fancy about it. There it is.
and it's magical
Yep.
because it's so
It's a
simple.
gift.
It's so plain. It's just
Yep.
there it is, and how lovely. Before I get back to Gina, Mike, I can't read the the chats. They go by too quickly, and I'm looking at all of you. But could you just repeat what you just put in the chat about the rhyme?
Yes. About writing a sonnet that does not sound when you read it naturally like a sonnet,
Mm-hmm.
but when you do the score the scorecard, it comes out as a sonnet. Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, well, you had a chat that went by very quickly, and that had something to do with the form and the I thought with the apostrophe S, but
Oh, I just put the apostrophe we're talking about is a radical sort of enjambment.
right.
Which the poem is going to use enjambment, I think, to sort of shed the rhyme pattern that it is still holding on to.
Right.
Um, I've always thought, I believe very much in buried rhyme. I don't know if buried rhyme was around in Hopkins' time or not, but I think it is actually. Buried rhyme forms a part of his poetics in the Wreck of the Deutschland. But what I don't like, and I think hardly any poet likes to rhyme a plural or a possessive form with an S with the singular form, like mile, smile, etc. I really don't like to see someone rhyme the word style with smiles. Um,
It's I think one of the things Gina, I see your hand up, and I I will get to you in a second. Uh, that this is a perfect sonnet. I mean, in terms of the rhyme scheme, uh, perfect Petrarchan sonnet, and 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 one of the sources of power in this poem, and one of the things that's so moving to me about it, is the way it is in terms of syntax and line breaks and enjambments, ending with that apostrophe S on the next line is just a way of breaking out of that the prison of the form, and that the poem is so much about breaking out of the prison of depression and self-torment.
Yep.
And how thoroughly the form and what Hopkins does with the form really expresses what he's feeling in the poem. Gina, sorry to keep you waiting.
That's okay.
We can't. I'm sorry. I can't hear you very well.
Can you hear me now?
Better. Yeah.
Okay. So not a fault of yours. In the waiting, because I was engaging so deeply with what people are saying, I forgot the different point that I was going to make, which is
please.
That had not been made, but I'd forgotten it. But I wanted to build upon some things that have already.
Gina, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but are you banging some keys or a bracelet or something? Because we're hearing that sound over your voice.
It could be my connection. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you sort of okay, but it sounds like you're in a tin can.
Can you hear me better now?
Not so much.
Yeah?
Well,
but you heard me before?
I did.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me? No.
Yes, but barely.
But barely. My volume is super high.
This is better.
Okay. So I forgot what I was going to say that was new, but I wanted to sort of build up on what has been older, and sort of Michael and you, I think we're building on one of those things. That S for me, and I'm not a great, I don't have a great ability with beats, yes, and stresses, but I also, on reading it, thought, it's breaking out of the poem in form, but also maybe breaking out of the form of the sonnet in terms of beats. I've had to analyze beats. I don't know that it actually does that, but that was a thought that came to me. I also wanted to say that, yes, very much yes, about Mallarmé and Hopkins. Mallarmé, I believe, stated that he was working out of the traps of the Alexandrian, right? And Hopkins is working that out. I think it's, appropriate to have a healthy skepticism about spirituality, but we have to remember that spirituality was ordinary experience for Hopkins, right? And the very foundation of sprung rhythm and inscape is spiritual in motivation, right? In essence, for him, it is the spiritual impulse that led him to formulate these. And then poets can have very different inducements to innovation, but the spiritual can be one. So,
Bill Symes, did you have a comment that you wanted to make? And then James. Oh, now we can't hear you.
I'm gonna actually, Gina.
Sorry.
There's some.
There you are.
Oh, sorry. Am I jumping ahead of someone? Should someone else go first?
Now you're fine.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions, really. One relates to between pie. I mean, I think Bill Bennett put a comment in the chat about pie referring to magpies and to piebald and pied beauty and so on. But I still don't quite understand why Hopkins decides to attach it to the preposition. I mean, I could see how we might have between pied mountains, but why would he attach it? Or is it attached to between because it's that which is the skies in between which are pied rather than the mountains themselves? So I just wanted to throw that question out.
Well, I take that as a verb, as a transitive verb.
Oh, right.
as
Okay.
skies wedge themselves between mountains and change the coloring of the landscape
Oh, right.
by
Oh,
by by
ah.
intervening, and that just seems to be one of Hopkins's,
Oh,
I
yeah,
think it's
yeah.
one of his most wonderful, translations from um
And that,
adjective to verb.
yeah, and that makes it fall nicely into line with his reliance on antimaria, on the conversion of parts of speech elsewhere.
Right,
I hadn't thought of it in
right,
those terms. The other
right.
thing I wanted to ask is whether people are struck by a kind of equivocation with regard to the locus of identity, because we have heart and self and mind, and it's as if he can't quite make up what is the defining part, as it were. And the I is, of course, separated from them. Let me have more pity on my heart. So the self
Hmm.
is separated from the heart. And
Right.
just one other thing, does anyone join me in finding soul self, the two vocatives at the start of the sestet, as possessing a Keatsian echo, soul self, the other soul self.
Oh, I I
Um,
hadn't I hadn't thought of that, but I love it.
uh, because that then sort of part of the source of the depression becomes isolation. His being reduced to a soul self, bereft of community or fellowship. But anyway, those were just my few stray
Yeah,
thoughts.
no, I like that. James, you've had
Yeah,
your hand up for a
yeah.
while, and then
I just,
well, and then one second, and then I want to go back to Jennifer, I think I caught her saying that she disagreed with me, and I would love to know in what way. But James, go ahead.
yeah, I just wanted to emphasize a little bit what the last person was just telling us about the contrast between head and heart. And I just wanted to mention that that contrast seemed to be the tension between the head and the heart is what this whole poem is about.
Hmm.
And that the first line telling us that the mind got to leave the heart alone. And I like, so anyway, that's all I want to say.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for saying that. Jennifer, are you there?
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
you
there you
should
are.
know that my note in the chat begins, I want to completely agree
Okay.
and to completely resist.
Okay.
Lloyd's point about Hopkins breaking out of the prison of the form, because it seems to me, as with many rituals, uh, I say, isn't it the form too that gives Hopkins a guide for breaking out of himself?
Oh,
And as I
sure.
say, I'm that's not really to disagree with you. It's just to kind of make sure that we don't just see a sonnet as something to rebel against. It's entirely, it seems to me, for many poets in emotional distress, a way of liberating themselves from it. And the form is something to collaborate with, or it sets up an arena where things can happen. But especially because, as Jules points out in a subsequent note, to preserve um, Hopkins will distort things to preserve the form as well. And it's kind of to have a target outside the self to aim for, that makes this exercise possible. So again, that's why I say begin by saying I want to completely agree with you. The resistance here is just a subset of agreement.
Right. And I want to say that when I say the prison of the form, prison is in quotes. And that I am not someone, I think form is is a release, um but that in a way, what he's doing in this poem kind of everything that's happening in this poem, the drama of the poem, yes, is 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 an attempt to be released from the convention that form is one important example of, and that there's a tension both rhythmically and in terms of rhyme and in terms of line break. This always always something is going on that both accommodates the traditional form because it's perfect formally, it's perfect, but rhythmically it's more complicated and more playful in some way, and saying, well, I accept this tradition, but I don't accept every element of it. I'm going to resist some some part of it somewhere or other in this little in this 14 line drama. Jules.
Thank you. Hi. I think I'm on a similar tip as you, Lloyd. I think that part of what the form does is it sort of simplifies. Like we haven't really said this in so much yet, I don't think, but the conundrum of sonnets is that they're so brief. And I mean, I know many of us are teachers. Like if we are speaking to less experienced writers about sonnets and they're exercising that form, what happens often is an oversimplification of a conundrum that they have to quickly resolve, right, in the after the volta. And and I think it was Gina who says that the the sestet um posits joy, or I think that was the word. That it's like it's an opening or something rather than a conclusion. And I find that to be actually quite moving and a really lovely use of the form. And all the conversation that we had earlier about prayer, and how this poem may be a prayer. We know he's quite pious and he's near to his death in this period of his life. Um, it feels like there's something very repeatable about this turn, this thought process where it's like it's a reminder or something to, like, in the depth of your despair, if you're reaching all the way inside to yank yourself forward, remember that there's a heaven place or something that's a possibility on the other end. It feels very open-ended to me. So, but I just wanted to briefly mention this sort of
Yeah.
part of the sonnet is that it's short.
Yes, right. Catherine? Catherine? You need to unmute.
If you're in that mood to write about your despair, your torment, your torment, your torment, thank goodness it's only going to be 14 lines. And picking that means, okay, if I'm going to do that, I got to get to the point somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, as Wordsworth said, nuns fret not their convent's narrow rooms.
Good analogy. Good analogy. Are there places where you're still not sure what's going on that maybe someone could help answer, because there are really knotty and difficult or challenging places in the poem that that
Can
we
anyone?
go
Sorry,
ahead,
Lloyd.
Bill, go please.
I just am struck by the failure of concord, of grammatical concord. Unforeseen times is plural, and yet the verb lights is singular. What's he up to there? Has anyone got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there must be a term. I mean, this is one
Isn't
of
it whose smile lights a lovely mile?
So, what are you doing then grammatically with unforeseen times? Rather, how does that fit in to the?
Well, it's still qualifying it, that the smile unforeseen times rather lights a lovely mile.
So that's all unforeseen times. Rather, is all adverbial, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Right.
But not to say that that seems easy or self-evident.
No.
And that
No.
the question is a totally viable question. We look to find that. But for me, that's where I go back to.
Yeah, it's just that he puts a semicolon in between, doesn't he? And to throw in a semicolon which divorces the subject from the verb generates necessarily confusion, I should have thought. But I think you might well be right.
I think thank you, Jennifer. I think you're right also, and I think that's one of the most difficult moments in the poem. And I think what I do when I read that ending is that I kind of mentally substitute a colon for the first dash. Unforeseen times, rather. And as an example of unforeseen times, as the unforeseen, the way skies between intervene, insert light between the mountains, and the way, and that light up a lovely mile, that make that journey. I actually hate the word journey in almost every form, but that make that process, that illuminate that process, that give you some hope between those dark mountains and along that make lovely, that light up what might seem like endless miles, but suddenly that light that comes between the mountains makes that endless or not so endless, but that make that painful movement, trip, journey, process, that give it some kind of illumination, that light it up in some way, that that makes it lovely, that you cherish it, or at least you cherish those moments when the light actually comes through. But I think grammatically and punctuationally, it's like a series of interruptions. I mean, those dashes are like a series of interruptions rather than a grammatical aid. uh, the grammar is just is so odd and so challenging, but in a way, those dashes are like the light that between pies a series of mountains. Jennifer, does that make some sense to you? Catherine?
if I were to do the plot of this in another way, I cast for comfort. Round my comfortless, I'm taking that as a noun, yes? Comfortless is a noun.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
so and then
Yeah.
instead of using let one more time, he says leave comfort, and then has this wonderful made-up word, which means it's very dark. But that seems to me to be the thrust of the poem, and the changing to leave a stronger from because we had let 4 times, that leave it means all right, done with it, leave it.
Yeah.
But that makes a nice kind of outline.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. I Bill Bennett.
Sorry, I was only thinking that there's something poignant about mile as the last word. Just one, numbered, that's it. It's not a great vista. You know, you can see a mile fairly easily and walk it quickly. And then that's it for that mile.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you. Gina, maybe last word, because I'm gonna have to leave in a couple of minutes. I apologize. I love this conversation. Gina, are you on?
Can you hear me?
Wow.
Yeah. Yes.
Now can you hear me?
Oh,
Not
no,
very
no,
well.
no. It's
Oh,
Terrible.
I don't know why it is.
I'm
Stop.
Gina, I'm afraid that there's some kind of noise on the line that's drowning you out.
But I'm in a very quiet room.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
Gina,
no,
I'm
no.
so
I think
sorry.
you need to turn the sound off.
I
Yeah,
know
I'm
that
sorry.
Denise had her hand up. I
Okay,
don't know if we
Denise.
have time.
Yeah,
Denise?
I had a question here. The last 6 lines are such a long sentence, amount to such a long sentence that I get a little lost in the clauses. And I'm curious whether in the penultimate line, see you should be construed as an inversion of you see, or as the verb and object of something else.
I
And
think
if so,
that kind of goes back to the Shakespearean element in the poem. I think that's certainly possible. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
oh, I keep going back and forth, and I can't quite figure it out, because if see is the verb and you is the object, what is the subject? Is it joy?
Denise, could it be imperative? Because it's the instruction to itself, call off thoughts, see you. This is one of the things I need to do.
I wondered about that too. I mean, if there had been a comma between the C and the U, I would say, yeah, that's probably what it is. But I just keep going around puzzled. Okay. Yule says she thinks it's an inversion.
I sometimes see God as the subject of that. Let God see you. But I think you that you light on some of the ambiguity in this very complicated poem. I think this is a really hard poem, and boy, I thank you so much for, I always, you remind me how much I learn about poems that I think I know really well, how much I learn from you about poems that I love and think I fully understand, but clearly don't, but still love them.
It just strikes me that we've been having more difficulty with the last 6 lines than with the first 8.
Yes. Oh, I think that's true. That's certainly been my experience.
Lloyd, when you talk about learning from, you learn more in this process, that's why you're fundamentally a teacher. That's what teachers do, rather than just.
It is one of the it is one of the joys of teaching, but
It's the hallmark of a
I
teacher.
feel like I'm just moderating what you incredibly smart and insightful people have to say. I'm so grateful to all of you for your participation and your willingness to take risks about what you're what you're thinking about the poem. Um, I'm always a little timid about some of those risks, but I am so grateful to you. Um, uh, even even the people who haven't said anything but are listening and watching, and your faces are so expressive, and uh, I learn from that too, and cherish it. So I'm so glad we're back. I don't know what the next poem is going to be yet, um, but we will let you know when as soon as I come up with one. And we do have we do have a date, Marita, for our
We
next
do. Yes, October 4th.
October 4th. So um not so far away.
Minutes away.
And thank you so much. I'm sorry I have to race off now. But
Thank you, Lloyd.
Thank you.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.